All right, good evening. It's 8 o'clock, so we'll go and get started. So the material for this week is all about strings, the different things that we can do with strings, how long strings are, making strings uppercase or lowercase, accessing each individual character of a string, going through loops with strings, string conditions, and like I said, a bunch of different methods that we can do with strings. So we'll start off by saying a string is just a sequence of individual characters, right? So if I have a string S equals, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? So that the string is all of the characters together, right? However, the only all a string is just a sequence of individual characters. It has the individual character A, followed by the individual character B, followed by a C, followed by a D, so on and so forth, right? So think of a string being made up of individual characters. And, it doesn't have to be just letters, string can contain numbers. String can contain special symbols, just like that. And that's fine. But still, each one is an individual character. A, then D, then S, then F, then 4, so on and so on. So it's important to remember that a string is not just one thing, it is a sequence of individual characters. And we will look at things we can do with each of those individual characters and how we can access each individual character. So let's put this back to something short and sweet. Let's just say the string is house, just some random word I thought of, right? So there may be times that we're interested in how long the string is. And if we want to know how long, if let's say we want to print out how many letters are in the string, what would we put here? Well, house has what, 5 letters, right? So if we did that and we run it, it prints out 5. And that is the number of letters in house, right? Actually, let's make this a little bit more descriptive. The number of letters in house is 5, right? So if we print that out, if we run that, it's correct, right? That's actually true. The number of letters in house is 5. That's fine. Well, let's say instead of house, we have mouse. And we run it. Well, this is a little bit off now, right? Our string is mouse, but we're still saying house here, right? House still does have 5 letters in it. But let's say I change this to car. That means I would have to change it to car here. And then I need to also count, okay, car has 3 letters, and I put that there. So now if I run this, that's true. The number of letters in car is 3. Well, what if I put boat? Okay, well, now I have to come here and put boat. I need to count up how many letters are in boat and change that, right? See how repetitive this gets? Well, let's use some Python so that whenever we change the string, then it'll automatically print out the right string and the number of letters. And we already know how to do the boat part, right? We could just do S, right? Like that. That's how we could print out what the string is. If we run this, and boat is 4, that's right. If we change this to coat, that's right. And, of course, as we expected, it changed the line to coat. What if we put hat here? Well, it prints out the right word, but it's saying there are 4 characters in it, which is not true, right? So let's fix this. So we would need to put 3 there, right? But I think you kind of see the point that this becomes very repetitive. there has to be a way that we can have Python tell us how many letters are in it. And there is. It's called len, which stands for length, and inside we put the string that we want to know how long it is. So what's going to happen here is the string S is going to be hat, and then we're going to print out the number of letters in S, which is hat. So to print out hat is the length of that string. That's what the len stands for. It stands for length. And since this S is the string, it'll tell me how many letters are in there. So now let's save it and run it. And that's much better. The number of letters in hat is 3. And now we can change this to whatever we want to. How many ever characters we want to. Let's save it and run it. And there you go. The number of letters in whatever that is 19. We could even take this as input. Input, enter your name, right? So now it's going to ask us to type in our name, and then it'll tell us how many letters are in our name. Enter your name, put Dan. There are 3 letters in, or the number of letters in Dan is 3. If we put my full name, there are 6 letters in that. And that's good. And that could, well, not could, that is useful for your assignment, where you're having to check if a password is a certain length, right? This is how you can check how long the string is. You can imagine for your assignment, you have the user type in the password, and then you can use this len to tell you if it's long enough. Something like if the length of the S is less than, if the length of S is less than, say, 10, print is too short. Right? Just leave it like that. That's fine, because this length, it gives you a number, right? It tells you, okay, it's 2, it's 3, it's 57, it's whatever, but it'll tell you how many characters are in that string. So now if we do this little comparison here, it'll tell us if it has less than 10 characters. So if we put Dan, it says it's too short. And that's true because Dan has 3 characters. That's less than 10, so it's too short. So if we put, just say this is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, is that enough? I'm like, nope, that's too short. Let's try A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. And that no longer tells me it's too short, right? Because the length of it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So because the length was 12, then the len of that string is 12. And of course, that turns out to be false. So that's how you can kind of use it, for your assignment when you're trying to figure out, if a password is the appropriate length. Okay, so that len is important to remember. It'll tell you how long a string is. Okay, so let's talk about accessing each individual character in the string. So we'll leave this here. We'll still get the input like this. We'll have you type it in. But last week you learned about the different loops. You know about the for loop. There's a for loop, and there's a while loop. Those are really the 2 big ones, right? So let's see how we can access each individual character of the string inside of our loop. And we'll see some of examples of what you can do with that information. But remember, so let's say if Dan is what I type in, let's say that's what I type in, then remember, this is just a sequence of individual characters. It's a D character, it's an A character, then it's an N character, right? But let's do a loop, and there's a couple ways you can do a loop through a string, right? You can do like this for C and S, and then we're just going to print out C. What is happening here is S is our string, right? S is whatever you typed in. It has a bunch of characters in it, whatever you type in. What this is going to do is it's going to do the loop. And each time in the loop, it'll give you one character from that string. So for example, if I type in Dan, let's just say that's what I type in. Actually, let's skip the type in. We'll just assign it directly. We'll say the string is definitely already equal to Dan. So when we come down to this loop, the first time in the loop, the C is going to be the first letter. So C will be the D character. Okay. And since we're going to print out C, it's going to print out that first character. Okay. The next time in the loop, C will be the second character. This is the second character, so that's what it'll print out. The next time in the loop, C will be equal to the next character. The next character is the N. So that's what it'll print out. It will print out the N. The next time through the loop, oh, there are no more characters. So that will be the end of the loop. The loop will finish. And let's kind of show this. We'll have a couple of print statements here. We'll have the start loop. And here we'll have end loop. This is just going to let us know when the loop is starting and ending because it'll print it out for us, right? So let's run that. As you can see here, now it doesn't print the string all out at once, right? It prints out start loop, so we know it's right here on line 4. Then here, it's going to print out the D just by itself. Then it prints out the A just by itself. And then it prints out the N just by itself. Those are the 3 iterations through this loop. Like I said, the first time in the loop, this C character, the C variable is the first character. The second time through the loop, it's the next character. And the next time through the loop, it's the N character. And the next time through the loop, well, there are no more characters, so that's the end of the loop. And then it goes to after the loop. So where we have end loop, so that's why we print the start loop. We print the D first time through the loop. We print the A second time through the loop. We print the N the next time through the loop. There are no more characters. So then it just goes to after the loop, the end of the loop statement. So that's how we can access each individual character. And the C isn't a special name or anything. You can name that whatever you want. You know, whatever the Python naming rules are for variables, that's fine. If we run it again like that, it works the exact same. This is just a variable name. I like to use C because that kind of tells me in my mind, okay, this is a character, you know, an individual character. But it's just a variable name. It can be whatever you want it to be. So that's one way to do a for loop. Here is another way to do the same for loop. We're going to do the same for loop. Start loop. We'll do the loop in the middle, and then we'll do an end loop, just so we can see where each one starts and ends. But they're all going to do the same thing. Okay, and here's how we do the other one. And again, we did loops last week. I'm just showing you how to apply them to strings. So we can say for I in range, the length of the string. And then each time we're going to print, right now we're just going to print out the I. We'll see why that's important in a minute. So now when we run this, you know, we get the first one like we did the first time, that's fine. But now we're starting the second way to do a loop. So we get the start loop, and then we just have it printing out 0, 1, and 2, and then end loop. What's happening here is it's still looping the same number of times, right? This loops 3 times, DAN. This also loops 3 times, 0, 1, 2. But what I'm printing out is just this I variable. This, like I said, this is just kind of a rehash of last week for loops, but showing you how to apply them to strings. So that prints out the I. That's okay, but how do we print out what character that's associated with? Well, one thing you have to think about is, again, this string is a bunch of individual characters, right? So the first character is D, the second character is A, and the third character is N. So you can think about this as D being at the first location in the string. A is being at the second location in the string. And N is being at the third location in the string. And so there's a way we can access each of those characters. We can say the character is equal to the name of the string, and then we have these brackets, and inside the bracket, we put the letter or the location that we want to access. And strings in Python, and not just strings, but arrays and lists, which we'll talk about next week, they are a zero index base. It's not just Python, it's every programming language I can think of uses this concept of indexes being zero based. And what do I mean by that is, in just plain speaking English, we would say, D is the first character, right? That's how we would say it, just speaking normally. However, in programming, which includes Python, the first letter actually counts as 0. So the D is in the 0 place. The A is in the 1 place. And the N is in the 2 place. If I had the rest of my name, the I would be in the 3. The E would be 4. And the L would be 5. That's just the way it is. A quirk about programming you have to remember is when you're accessing characters in a string or lists and arrays, which we'll talk about next week, you access them 0 based, meaning, again, one more time, D is the 0 character. So for instance, if we did this right here, we'll print I and C. We're doing this loop. We're going to loop through however long the string is. And the I is just sequentially counting in numbers. It starts off at 0. As you can see here, it started off at 0. Then I became 1. Then I became 2. And it would just keep counting up like that, however long the string is. So now inside this loop, I'm going to say, okay, this C variable, I'm just making it up, is equal to this string, but only a very small part of the string. The 0 character. And what is the 0 character? The 0 character is this D, right? So if I run this, it should just print out whatever the I is, so it'll count up 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. And the C will be equal to the character D. And that's because I'm saying C is equal to this string, but only the 0 character of it. Let's see it happen. And there we go. You can see, here we go. We're starting that loop. The I starts off at 0, but the character is D. Why? Because I said I want the string, but character 0. And every time through the loop, I'm telling it to give me character 0, right? So what can I do differently here so that it gets each of the characters, right? I don't want only the first character every time. I want to access every character. Well, notice the I goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Is that useful? It is, because D is 0, A is 1, N is 2, I is 3, so on and so forth. So instead of getting the string at 0, if we get the string at I, that should give us what we want. So let's run it. Let's see if we get what we want. And we do get what we want. And why is that? So the first time in the loop, I is 0. And the 0, and so S of 0 is the D. The next time in the loop, I is 1. And so the character at the 1 spot is A. The next time in the loop, I is 2. And the character 2 is that N. So that's right. And it finishes until the end of the string. So these are two ways you can have a for loop to access each individual character in the string. We'll do one more quickly with the while, but the while isn't really much different than this for loop, but I'll do it just so you can see what it looks like. So we'll do the start loop and the end loop just so we can see on our screen where they start and end. We have to start a variable at 0. Now we say while that variable is less than the length of our string. And I'm just going to type it out real fast. And you'll see how it looks very similar to that previous one we did. Yep. So you can see how these two look very similar to each other, right? So this just kind of has the for I in the range, all right there. But this is a while loop that does almost the same thing. It's just we put this I starting at 0 on a different line. Then we're saying while that I is less than however long the string is. Oh, I almost forgot one thing. Then we have to add 1 onto the I each time. Actually, watch what happens if I forget to do that. That's why the while one like this isn't very commonly used. You'll see these two much more frequently. So I made a mistake and forgot something off here. What happens is actually going to crash. Watch. Should be a index out of bounds or error. Oh, no, actually it's just going to run forever. See, it's running forever and ever and ever. It's an infinite loop. Because what I forgot to do is add 1 onto the I, which you need for a while loop. So now if we run it, there we go. There's the last one, and we get what we expected. Okay, so that's how we can access each individual character of a string. And you can use this. Let's say you want to know how many A's are in a string. You want to know how many times does the character A appear in the string. How could we do that? Well, let's get rid of these two real fast. Let's say we want to count the number of A's. We'll have a variable called count. It starts off at 0 because we don't have any A's yet. Now we're going to, let's get rid of this start and end loop. We don't need that anymore. We don't need to print that either. We want to count how many A's are in the string, right? Well, as we demonstrated, the C is equal to whatever letter it is currently at, right? So we can say if C is equal to the letter A, then we're just going to add 1 onto our count. At the end, we'll just print out our count. That should tell us how many A's are in that string, right? So the string is Daniel. We're going to have a variable start off being 0. We're going to loop through the string. Each time in the loop, C is equal to the next letter. If that letter is equal to A, I'm going to add 1 onto my count. Right? So if we do it with this, the answer should be 1, right? Because there's 1 A in Daniel. Let's run it. There we go. We get 1. If we put A, B, B, C, C, D, D, the answer should be 2. And there it is. Okay. So that's one thing you could do with loops and counting. Right. So let's talk about string slices. This is usually a little bit of a difficult concept to grasp for a lot of people. So I already showed you, let's say if I print A of 0. Oops. We've already talked about what this A, excuse me, not A of 0, it's going to be this string. There we go, right? Because S is our string variable. And we have the two brackets. Inside the bracket is the letter of the string we want to access. So if I say print out string at index 0, that should be the D. And sure enough, it is. If I put at character space 1, that's going to be the A. And it is. If I put at character spot 4, what does that say? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That should be the E. And it is. Okay. But we can do more than individual characters. We can actually do multiple characters. The way we do that is we put where we want to start, we put a colon, and we put where we want to end, but +1. Let's see what I mean by that. Let's say if I put 0 to 3. Before I just had one single number in here. When you have one single number, it means access that one single character. But when you have this, you have a number, a colon, and a number, you're accessing more than one character. So this is going to access starting at index 0, and that D is index 0, and it's going to go until index 3. Well, actually, it'll go to index 3 minus 1. And what do I mean by that? Which character is index 3? So D is, this is 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So that I is the 3, right? But just the way this works in Python is this is one more than how far you want to go. So if I is 3, the result of this is actually going to be 1 fewer. So this should just be the DAN. Let's run it. And sure enough, we print out DAN because here we are selecting more than one character, starting at 0 and going up to 3 minus 1. So if you look at it like that, take 3 minus 1 and you get 2. So we're going to start at 0 and go up to 2. So this is 0, 1, 2, and that's what we get. We get Dan. And you don't have to start at the beginning. You could put 1 to say 5. And what are we going to get from that? Well, A is 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we take 1 away from that. So we should get ANIE. And sure enough, that's what we get. So this is the way you can access more than one character of a string. This is what we call a string slice, where you are accessing multiple characters in the string at one time. Okay. Now, there are a couple of shortcuts. If you want to start at the beginning of a string, you can use a 0. If we use a 0, what do we get? We get DANIE. And that's right, because we start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we take 1 off of the 5, so that's what we get. And that's right. But there's a shortcut that if you want to start at the beginning, you can just omit the first number. If you leave out the first number, then Python just assumes you mean to start at the beginning. So that's fine. So if we leave out the 0, then Python knows to start at the beginning, which it does. All right, let's put the 1 back in there and see what it gives us. It should be the ANIE, that's fine. Likewise, if we leave off the second number, then Python just assumes you mean go until the end of the string. So here we're going to start at 1. So we start at 1. And since there is not a second number, that means we go until the end of the string. If we run that, there we go. We start at 1 and we went to the end of the string. Those are array slices. If you want to access multiple characters at one time. All right, let's go back down to single characters for a minute. So, we can do this C is equal to S of 2, right? Well, let's print this C. So like I said, this S index 2 is accessing the second index of this string variable, right? So that's 0, 1, 2. So that's the character N, right? And that works just fine, right? She gives us an N, and it does. So you may think, well, can we do it the other way? Can we say this second character is equal to something else? Let's say we want to change it to a Z. Can we do that? And we'll print out the whole string. So here we're going to say the string is equal to Daniel. So now we're trying to say in this string, the second index, we want to change it to be the value Z. And then we're just going to print out the string. Can we do that? Answer is no, we can't. Why can't we do that? It seems like we should be able to, that, if this string at the second index right now is N, shouldn't we just be able to change that to another letter if we want to? The answer is not like this. And the reason is there is a word that is called immutable. 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 What that means, means something that cannot be changed. And what we're trying to do here, we are trying to change this string. But in Python, strings are immutable. There are some programming languages have that. Other programming languages do let you change it. But in Python, strings are immutable, meaning they cannot be changed. So whenever I try to change this individual character of the string, Python gives me an error. And it says, it tells me on line 2, right there, this is what the line says. And the error is the string object, so S is our string, does not support item assignment. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to assign a different character to that part of the string. And you can't do that in Python because strings are immutable. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't change the entire variable. So this right here is trying to change the string itself. S is the string. This is one single character in the string, and we're trying to change that one single character in this existing string. Right? So you can't do that. What you can do, let's just do S equals Daniel and print out S equals Steffi, and then print out the string. Can we do that? The answer is yes, we can. So what's the difference? Well, here, when we're trying to do this, we are trying to change. We're looking at the index 2 in this string. We're looking at that N, and we're trying to change this N to something else. This is the string, and we're trying to change one character in the string, and you can't do that. So the difference between, this line 2 and line 4 is this is making a new string. This isn't changing Daniel. It's not trying to change any character in there. It's just making a completely new string. It's saying, okay, S, you used to be Daniel, but now I'm going to change you to a completely new string. And that's just fine and dandy. Just like that. That's fine. But we cannot change individual characters in a string. You just can't do that in Python. We did loops and counting, the conditions. All right. Last thing we'll start talking about is string methods. There are a bunch of built-in methods you can do with a string. We're not going to cover them all. But let's say you had Daniel like this. Oops. Daniel like this, right? And let's say, well, we'll go over the different methods and then ways you can use them. So one thing you can do, print, we do s.lower. So what does this do? This takes the string S, which is Daniel, and it makes all of the characters lowercase. And then now we're just going to print it out. So when we run this and print it out, notice that the D in Daniel went from uppercase to lowercase. That's what the lower does. We could do s.upper, and these are all built-in functions. If we do that, guess what's going to happen? Pretty easy to guess. Run it. It makes all of the characters uppercase. Okay, that's nice. What you have to be careful here, though, is if I do this s.upper here and then print s, what is going to get printed out? Are we going to get this string as it is, or are we going to get it printed out in uppercase letters? Which is the case? We're going to get it as it is, Daniel. Why is that? It has to do with that strings are immutable. You can't change the individual characters of a string. So what the s.upper does, it doesn't change this string. It doesn't convert these individual letters. It actually gives you a new string. So if we say new string equals this, and then let's say print s, and we'll print new string. Let's see what happens. So we're going to say the original string is Daniel with only the D capitalized. The new string is that string uppercase. Then we're going to print the original string and print the new string. See what happens? There we go. Get the original string as is and the new string all capitalized. That's because when we do this s.upper, it does not change these characters. Like I said, a string is immutable. You cannot change those characters. But what this does is it creates a new string with all uppercase letters. And so I'm going to say, okay, this variable, and new string has no meaning. You can name that variable whatever you want to name it. This s.upper, it makes a new string, which then I'm going to say, okay, this variable is equal to that new string. And you can see that when we print the s, it retains its original value because you can't change those individual letters. And of course, this variable is all the uppercase letters, just like that. The same thing applies to lower. If we want to do the lower here, no difference. And run that. The original string still has the capital D. Oops. And then that new string we made has the lowercase. So that's two things you can do, upper and lower. How is that useful? Let's say we want to know if a string contains Dan. somewhere in it, right? So let's say if Dan in the string, print, it's there, right? Else, print, not there, right? So what this is going to do, it's going to see if DAN is somewhere in that string, right? What do you think this is going to print right now, just as it is? It's going to print not there. Why? Well, this is looking for lowercase DAN, but this is an uppercase D with lowercase an. So these two things are not equal to each other. So it did not find this lowercase dan in there. Okay. Well, what if we do this? If Dan NS or capital DAN NS, does that work? Yeah, it works. It's there. Okay, well, what if we had this? Now it doesn't work again, right? Okay, well, let's add another one on here. Or, was it DA little n NS? It works all of a sudden again. But how many times are you going to do this, right? So what we can do, we just say, is Dan in the lowercase string? Much simpler, huh? So what we'll do, we'll make a lowercase version of the string, and then we just compare the lowercase letters to it. Let's get this as input so it's easier for me to run through the possibilities. Enter, whatever. So now it's just going to look for DAN anywhere in it. So I can put lowercase Dan. It's there. I can put uppercase DAN. It's still there. I can put little d, big A, little n. It's there. I can put big D, little a, big N. And it's there. And that's fine because even though I'm mixing uppercase and lowercase letters, this S dot lower makes them all lowercase. And then I just need to compare with the lowercase. You could kind of flip that on its head and put capital DAN and make that upper. And really that has the same effect. It'll just, whatever you type in, it'll just make the letters uppercase. And then it compares in uppercase to all the uppercase letters. So that's the upper and lower. We've already did the length, the LEN. We did that at the beginning with the loops. Two more that I want to show you, and then we'll start wrapping it up, is we can say starts with. So we have a string. We say starts with. And so if it starts with an E, I don't know, I just kind of made it up. So if it starts with an E, then we'll say it's there or it's not there. So now when we run it, we type in some characters. It's not there. Why? Because it doesn't start with an E. We do this, put an E, some stuff. It's there. It does start with an E. So this is an easy way to see if a string starts with a specific letter. I'm pretty sure this works for multiple letters. Let's just say we're going to see if it starts with END. So we put E and some other stuff, not there. EN, some other stuff, not there. END, some other stuff. Oh, it's there. So this can be used to determine if a string starts with some specific characters, if you would need to find that useful for some reason. And note that if I have some characters and then those letters, it still doesn't find it because it's only looking for it at the beginning of the string. So that's what it starts with. And then the last one we'll do is find. And we'll just print it out. We're going to say I is equal to s.find. Let's say we're looking for the character E. We'll still use E for some reason. And then we're going to print I. What this will do, this will look in the string, and wherever it finds the character E, what index it finds that character E, then it's just going to print that out. That's a lot more, it'll make more sense once we run it. So let's run it. Let's say we say Daniel. It prints out 4. So where did that 4 come from? Remember, we're looking for an E. Well, there is an E in Daniel. And where's that at? That's at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's at the 4th index, and that's what it prints out. So this gives us back the index where a character appears. Well, what if it's not in there at all? Put Danny. It gives us a -1. That's actually just a way for Python to indicate to us that that character doesn't exist at all. So you can imagine if you're looking for something that has the character E in it, you could say if I is equal to -1, then it doesn't exist, right? Else, we'll print where it's at. So let's run that. So now if we put Daniel, of course, that gives us the 4 because the E does exist and it's at index 4. And we put something that doesn't exist, it tells me it doesn't exist because when I do this find, if it does not exist, then this I will be -1. And here I'm just doing the check. Well, if it is -1, that means it doesn't exist. So that's how we can do the find. Okay, so for your assignment, you have to, get a password from the user, which is kind of what I did right here. You can think about this, getting the password from the user, and you have to do some checks. Does the password fall within a certain minimum and maximum number of characters, right? Does it contain certain letters? Does it not contain certain like strings, substrings, those kind of things? Everything that you need to check for that password, we've kind of went over this evening with all of these string type functions and accessing individual strings and things like that. Okay, so that should be all you need to know to be able to successfully complete your assignment. Of course, if you have any issue with it, you please let me know, and the sooner the better. Again, I've said it for a few weeks now, but if you email me at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night, it's very unlikely that I will be able to respond to you before the assignments actually due. Okay, email is the best way to reach me. I get notifications on that, and I can usually get you an answer back very, very quickly. So please reach out if you're having problems. All right, so I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions you may have. All right, no questions heard. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. I will get this video posted up. If not tonight, then by tomorrow morning. All right. Have a good rest of your weekend.